The Imperium of Man, a galactic empire of 1,000,000 worlds, a civilization that measures its suffering not in years but in millennia. It is a state of perpetual total war, fought across the void and on every dusty, irradiated, or teeming planet it claims. We have chronicled the endless armies, the titans that stride like gods, the fleets that stretch across the stellar gulf. But what if all that endless industry, all that sacred blood, led to a different, colder endpoint? What if the war wasn't won by the Imperium's legions, but by its willingness to sacrifice everything? The true, horrifying power of the Imperium is not a plasma gun, nor a bolt of cyclonic energy. It is a single, unrecallable, terrifying word, inscribed in the cold writ of the Inquisition, exterminatus. What if the Warhammer worlds were annihilated? The question is not a hypothetical. It is the core, brutal logic of this galaxy. Because the Imperium exists not just to fight, but to purify. And purification at this scale means genocide, total, irreversible. We are not asking if a world can be destroyed. We are asking, what is the true cost of that decision? What happens to the soul of an empire when annihilation is written into the law? What are the weapons, the precedents, the desperate last words? And what horrors wait on the other side of the blast? This is not a tale of heroism. This is the logbook of the end. And the terror is that this decision, this ultimate act of destruction, is considered the purest expression of imperial duty. The strength of the Imperium truly lies in resolution. When doubt is heresy and faith is the only law, the most potent weapon is an order, cold, immutable, and inscribed in the endless codices of the Inquisition. Exterminatus is the sanction of the highest authorities, intended to annihilate all life on a world, reserved only for extreme circumstances where the threat, be it chaos, corruption, Xenos infestation, or mere disbelief, is so high it threatens to spread across the stars. It is not an act of rage, but an accounting. When a world is deemed to cost more to reclaim than it is worth, politically or militarily, the final balance is struck. The authority to utter that final word rests with the few. High commanders of the Militarum and Navy, the Adeptus Custodes, and the most terrifying, the full members of the Imperial Inquisition, who, since the Horus Heresy when the galaxy burned and the Emperor was entombed, have spoken on his behalf, becoming the final arbiters of planetary death. But think of the terror. You are a citizen on a hive world, oblivious to the void war overhead. Your doom is not decided by a general on the battlefield, but by a distant, cloaked figure stamping a seal on a document in a starship thousands of miles above you. Engagement hook, a pause for the audience to absorb the scale. Even in this grim epoch, there is a check. A junior ordo of the Inquisition, the Ordo Excorium, was created solely to manage these matters. Their function is to prevent mass genocide when a viable alternative exists, and their existence provides a chilling statistical truth about the Imperium. This small order, numbering fewer than 100 inquisitors, approves only about 10% of the requests they review. 10%. Imagine the scale of the other 90% that were judged salvageable. And yet this is the Imperium, where the human factor is the primary element, and many decisions are made because of politics, leverage, or the self-interested motives of a high-ranking individual. For corruption and abuse have always been the scourge of this empire, and the final line of defense against galactic ruin is, itself, hopelessly flawed. The process of planetary execution can be carried out in numerous horrific ways. First, the Imperial viral bomb releases a pathogen known as the Life Eater virus, an engineered predator that targets and destroys all organic cellular structures, turning every piece of planetary life, flora, fauna, human, xenos, into undifferentiated organic sludge and highly flammable gases. The virus can penetrate even sealed environmental suits, even space marine power armor. The speed is its terror. During the Horus Heresy, the infamous viral bombardment of Istvan III annihilated its entire population of 16 billion people in just a few solar minutes, leaving the planet barren but still technically habitable after the fires died down. a grim testament to efficiency. The Life-Eater virus was largely replaced in later millennia by the more robust and reliable cyclonic torpedo. This is the ultimate planetary weapon, launched from low orbit, designed to destroy the entire planetary biosphere either by igniting all free oxygen in the atmosphere in a thermonuclear reaction, or by straightforward plasma bombardment via nuclear synthesis. The result is always the same. The atmosphere is burned away, the oceans are boiled into steam, and the detonation is typically powerful enough to crack the planet's crust and destabilize its core. A variation is the atmospheric torpedo, used to condemn the planet Medusa IV, which was seized by chaos forces near the perilous warp rift known as Van Gruther's Rapidity, where the warheads ignited its oxygen-rich air, turning metal into molten slag and stone into glass, and Medusa IV burned brightly for an entire solar month. The Mortalis-class atmospheric missile uses phosphex, a highly specialized ancient imperial weaponry whose lethal green haze consumes all carbon-based elements on the planet, rendering it uninhabitable by carbon-based life. And for worlds without atmosphere, such as the eerie Necron Tomb worlds, the Imperium has the two-stage cyclonic torpedo, a melter charge that pierces the crust down to the mantle, followed by a modified plasma charge designed specifically to destabilize and shatter the core, literally breaking the planet apart from within. Engagement Hook, a moment of reflection on the scale. We look at these instruments of death and see the sheer, obscene scale of the Imperium's engineering. They didn't just design one way to destroy a world, they designed 7 distinct tools for the job, tailored to the specific threat they wished to erase. Finally, there is the most costly yet undeniable method, the asteroid strike, radically altering the orbit of a nearby moon or large asteroid, placing it on a collision course. While effective, it destroys the planet in question. The Administratum vehemently urges against it because it may take weeks, even months, for the asteroid to hit, expending precious resources while ships stand idle, as the Imperium's final act of murder must also be fiscally responsible. Sound Hook, a low, grating sound, representing a moon being pulled from orbit. The grim reality is that planetary destruction is a common currency in the dark future, and the Imperium is not alone in its capacity for annihilation. The Eldari, once rulers of the galaxy, possess artifacts of terrifying power, like the Fireheart, which relies on resonant impact on a planet's core, causing it to break down. But the Eldari, who deeply value life, do not rush to use their artifacts with the same recklessness as the Imperium, making their destruction regretful. The Necrons present the most intriguing array, possessing the World Engine, a tomb world resembling a planet that carried a gargantuan Gor's cannon, capable of disintegrating entire planets with a single volley, and more terrifyingly, the Cetan Shards, who, having mastered the laws of physics, can simply drop a planet's satellites onto its surface, or begin to split its crust with pure, effortless manipulation, or deploy the network of Blackstone pylons in the Pariah sector, which suppresses and destroys higher life forms by cutting them off from the warp, causing a horrific, consciousness-shattering collapse of vital signs, a method that is quiet, absolute, and paralyses any warp entities in a state of eternal agony. The technologically advancing Tiao possess weapons capable of planetary destruction, but their unique moral compass guides them toward more restrained, rational development, such as the Arc Cannon, which destroyed only the central nervous systems of higher life forms across vast distances, leaving infrastructure and the rest of the biosphere intact, an ideal means of clearance for subsequent colonization. Then there are the Orcs, whose most effective method is attack moons, where they equip asteroids and moons with engines and gravitational nexuses and steer them straight at planets. And during the infamous War of the Beast, they constructed massive fortresses from moons, equipping them to literally wipe chunks the size of mountains off the target world and hurl them into the moon's ever-growing structure. Sound hook, a deep, drawn-out WAGH, fading into the industrial score. The exterminatus is often used not just to destroy a threat, but to starve a greater foe. This is the grim legacy of Inquisitor Lord Cryptman, who, faced with the advance of Hive Fleet Leviathan, made a rigid, heartless decision. To establish a quarantine cordon and implement a scorched earth tactic across an entire sector, condemning dozens of worlds to immediate exterminatus, ensuring its biomass could not become fuel for the production of new tyrannid bioforms, an act of brutal necessity that saved billions by sacrificing millions. The world of Cordelis, a vital dockyard world, was among them, where the local Imperial forces, expecting aid from the Ultramarines, were not killed by the Tyrannids, but by Lord Cryptman's order to use viral bombs before the aliens could reach it, and the large civilian casualties and the lie told to the defenders angered the loyalist forces deeply. The most effective and powerful means of exterminatus is arguably possessed by the Tyrannids themselves. It is they themselves, their very essence, as their main goal is the complete annihilation and consumption of life, and a Tyrannid invasion is a self-executing, self-consuming exterminatus of planetary biomass. Following the defeat of the traitors at the Siege of Terra, the Loyalists sought not just victory, but obliteration of the heresy's roots, leading to the great purging of the traitor legion's homeworlds. Barbarous home of the Death Guard was obliterated by the Dark Angels with cyclonic torpedoes. Chemo's home of the Emperor's Children was bombarded until its fortress monastery was dust and placed under eternal quarantine. And Kulkus, home of the Word Bearers, was already ruined but was finished off with cyclonic torpedoes from the battle barge Octavius, shattering its geological structure. But the most profound planetary murder in this period belongs to the Night Lord's Primarch, Conrad Kurz, who chose to kill his own home world, Nostromo, before the heresy had even fully begun, where Kurz's fleet of 50 warships converged their weapon batteries, spearing the planet with columns of blinding white light, and a single, enormous beam of energy pierced Nostromo's dense crust, striking the core. The Primarch watched the tectonic plates shatter and the molten heart spill out, feeling not dread but immense relief, whispering, "I take the weight of this atrocity upon myself, and I shall not fear it, for I am the embodiment of fear." He destroyed his home not out of strategic necessity, but as a final, monstrous demonstration that the faith he had lived by was empty words. This was exterminatus as existential statement. The toll of exterminatus often falls hardest on the very warriors sworn to protect humanity. Captain Gabriel Angelus of the Blood Ravens chapter was forced to order cyclonic torpedoes unleashed on Siren, his own home world, after its population fell to the ruinous powers, a decision that haunted him for the rest of his life. And less than a decade later, another Blood Ravens recruit world, the perilous Typhon Primaris, was subjected to exterminatus by the Imperial Navy of Retribution to counter the rising threat of chaos and tyrannids. For the Loyalists, this galactic truth means that where they draw breath, the seeds of the end are already sown. Exterminatus is not always a clean shot from orbit. Sometimes it is delivered by desperation or by fate's perverse humor. Hesperax, a dark Eldar world, was shattered by a tiny force of escaping Deathwatch kill team members who rigged the volcano beneath the arena, an exterminatus initiated by desperate warriors. And consider the Emperor's Tears, a rare, modified viral strain obtained from the Mechanicus, intended to attack the spark of life itself and extract life from all that existed when tested on the heretic world Carnage. The horror was that the virus was created by a Magos possessed by Nurgle, and all those killed were instantly resurrected as plague zombies, guaranteeing the total infection of the entire region. The supposed final solution became the final epidemic. In the 36th millennium, during the Wars of Apostasy, the tyrannical Mad Gog Van Dyer took depraved pleasure in torturing dissenters, and his severe mood swings resulted in the exterminatus of numerous densely populated imperial worlds simply because they exhibited minor signs of disrespect toward him. And so strong was his power that his atrocities and his insane ravings were documented in minute detail for future generations, meaning the horror is not just the destruction, but the bureaucracy that meticulously records the whim of a madman. The desolate planet Fenin Prime was subjected to exterminatus with viral bombs after its Lord Commander declared secession, and was subsequently put under the control of the Xanthite Lord Inquisitor, who used the dead world as a repository for captured prisoners. But the corruption was not over. Alarming reports found that the Inquisitors on Fenin Prime were themselves traitors, combining warp sorcery with Dark Age technology. And the final verdict was to destroy the dead world, where the Mechanicus were tasked with pulling a nearby moon from its orbit and smashing the accursed planet to pieces. The Imperium had to annihilate a planet twice to be sure. The galaxy of Warhammer 40,000 is defined by these acts. The complete annihilation of a world is not an accident. It is the ultimate safety mechanism of a galactic civilization that knows no compromise. The fate of countless worlds has been sealed by this terrible certainty. Maladrax, a fortress world of the Iron Warriors, was cleansed by the Imperial fists, only to be utterly destroyed later by a mysterious, non-imperial force known as the Phalas. St. Josmund's Hope, a colossal penal colony, was threatened by chaos, and since traditional bombardment was impossible, a small, elite strike team was sent on a suicidal mission to trigger tectonic instability by overloading the generator network in the main prison complex, ensuring the planet's demise. The agri-world of Qataris was instantly engulfed by a demonic incursion, and the Inquisition ships arrived to begin the exterminatus, witnessing a contamination that was simply beyond the feasibility of salvation. During the First War for Armageddon, the Grey Knights' ships were initially destroying transports of the guardsmen who had witnessed the unfolding madness, and though the Space Wolves rescued many, the Inquisition tracked down the landing transports, destroying them in warp transit, and any world or outpost that made contact with survivors faced exterminatus by the Grey Knights' ships, resulting in the destruction of 4 neighboring worlds. The Space Wolves' act of mercy only doomed more to destruction. The Imperial Fist's Primarch, Rogel Dorn, was present when the entire Phalanx, his flagship, was prepared to enact exterminatus on a world that refused to surrender, showcasing that even the most honorable legions view this as a last resort duty. Sondheim V was transformed into a demon world by Makar the Reborn, but when Hive Fleet Leviathan descended upon it, the Sky Sentinels chapter decided to call for exterminatus without even considering making planetfall, leaving the Grey Knights to retrieve a valuable artifact before the entire world was destroyed and the memories of the involved Sky Sentinels were erased. Koron 9 became a site of cultist sacrifices to the demon Prince Gargataloth, and after a detachment of 300 Grey Knights managed to banish the demon, the world was subjected to complete obliteration. The Imperium chose to annihilate a world even after the demon was gone, to erase the memory of the taint. The uprising on Krandor 3 was so severe, led by Chaos Space Marines and vile creatures, that 3 chapters of Space Marines guarded resources and officials, while the final act of exterminatus was mercifully enacted. Shenel Long, a world that repeatedly welcomed the word-bearers, was concluded by Chief Librarian Mephiston to be irrevocably tainted by chaos, ordering its destruction in the fire of exterminatus. Joros, the first home world of the Firehawks chapter, was destroyed during the Wars of Apostasy by Gog Van Dyer's Templar fleet through a thermal bombardment that boiled its atmosphere and scorched its surface, leaving only charred ash on the ground. The world of Amon Morris was deemed too tainted by mutation to continue existing and was disgracefully obliterated by exterminatus, and after its destruction, its previous location was struck from all records, a final erasure from galactic history. Rifenin, ravaged by civil war, was subjected to a desperate plan by Lord General Artemis Blythe, who lured the Tyranids to the planet and waited for the biomass absorption phase, after which a tiny vessel launched a single torpedo announcing the final death of the world and the life forms of the Xenos on its surface, a calculated, tactical murder to deny the enemy resources. Midgardia, ravaged by the demons of Tzeentch and Nurgle, was subjected to exterminatus by the Dark Angels, but the cleansing fire only annihilated all life on the planet's surface, not in its subterranean cities, forcing Logan Grimnar of the Space Wolves to destroy the planet itself by detonating Midgardia's core with an especially powerful cyclonic torpedo, a cataclysm that triggered gravitational waves that rippled through the Fenris system, forcing the demonic Silver Towers to vanish back into the warp. The destruction of one world saved a whole system. Matora's IV was subjected to exterminatus carried out by the Death Watch due to the presence of parasites from the dreadful xenope form known as Skinweaver, highlighting that even minor biological threats can necessitate planetary erasure. The world of Franks went silent for 20 years, and when an inquisitorial fleet arrived, the planetary governor lied, claiming warp storms, only to be exposed as a Genestealer cultist planning to infiltrate the fleet, resulting in the immediate cleansing of the world with viral bombs, a chilling example of deep infiltration being met with total annihilation. The secession of the Forge world Moira resulted in its annihilation by a punitive exterminatus conducted by the fleet of the Mars Mechanicus, not before the Moira schism split the Adeptus Mechanicus in two, demonstrating that internal imperial conflict can also lead to the ultimate sanction. Novgorod, faced with a simultaneous outbreak of the Plague of Unbelief and an orc invasion, was subjected to exterminatus, proving that when multiple threats converge, the Imperium chooses wholesale destruction over selective cleansing. Verdun II, a site of fierce battles against recidivists, was ultimately condemned by the Death Strike Chapter Master, who chose exterminatus on the rebellious planet Hesperax, note, distinct from the Dark Eldar world, rather than endure further heavy losses. Sometimes exterminatus is the choice of battlefield exhaustion. The Forbidden Dead world Ammon and Morris in the Kixis sector, after horrors witnessed during the Angeva Crusade, was not only obliterated by exterminatus for mutation, but its previous location was struck from all records, creating an actual void in Imperial history. The agri-world of Cornucopia, where a splinter of Hive Fleet behemoth sparked a Genestealer cult uprising, was subjected to exterminatus by order of Marnius Calgar himself, demonstrating the necessity of sacrificing a world to slow the Tyranid advance. Torius, cut off by a warp storm for 300 years, reappeared as a demonic world teeming with horrors. Inquisitor Thrax ordered its destruction in a gesture of mercy, acknowledging that sometimes annihilation is the only form of salvation left for the damned. Horstis became a demonic world under Nurgle's dominion, and Chaplain Vaz Calvarius of the Silver Skulls, surrounded by the enemy, called for exterminatus from orbit, leaving no chance for himself or that fallen world, the final act of loyalty being self-sacrifice and planetary murder. Gistos was fractured into pieces only months after a latent Psyker boy unleashed a strange curse that opened a demonic portal, leading to oceans of boiling blood and battles between Khorne and Nurgle demons, after which the Inquisitors of the Ordo Malas decided the world was tainted beyond redemption, leading to exterminatus by the strike cruisers of the Grey Knights. The world of Davin, the site of a destructive warp storm and a massive sphere made from the bones of trillions of organisms, was visited by the combined fleets of Sanguinius, Gilliman, and Lionel Johnson, who destroyed Davin with cyclonic torpedoes to break through the storm and reach Terra, an act of strategic obliteration committed by the Primarchs themselves. The population of Felcor began to rebel against the Imperium, and while the Imperial Guard was fighting, they discovered a genestealer cult behind the uprising. Though the contamination was technically eradicated, it was already too late as the first Tyranid bioships began appearing, forcing the Imperial fleet to conduct an exterminatus with viral bombs, annihilating the planet's entire surface, a world sacrifice to deny the swarm. Eldritch, held by Necrons, was destroyed on the orders of exterminatus executed by 3 companies of the Sable Sword Space Marine chapter, using 2-stage torpedoes for complete obliteration of the Tomb world. During the battle with the Tiao Empire for Doomer 4, the Ultima Primo's battle fleet found itself compelled to arrange a temporary truce with the Xenos and obliterate Doomer 4 itself. As the world ended up entirely under the sway of destructive forces, leading the commanding fleet to destroy it with cyclonic torpedoes and viral bombs, allowing the main Tiao forces to retreat, an unprecedented act of momentary cooperation with the Xenos to achieve a mutual exterminatus. When a joint expedition of rogue traders and the 5th Company of the Dark Angels reached orbit around Phase 5, they fought their way through hordes of slaves and eventually destroyed the massive logical engines housing the Heretic. But the former captives rejected the authority of the Imperium and longed to be under the control of the machine once more, forcing the Dark Angels to undertake an exhausting 4-month campaign to combat the rebels, after which they left Phase 5 to burn in the flames of exterminatus, the only way to purge the desire for non-imperial control. The dusty yet adamantium-rich planet Saharia became the site of a rusted claw cult invasion, but the planetary governor Enst, unwilling to report this and risk sanction, covertly hid his core supporters in underground bunkers and then organized a systematic bombardment with hyperfusion warheads from his personal arsenal against all the cities he marked as beyond salvation, annihilating 98% of the population. But unfortunately, among the few survivors was a large number of the resilient Rusted Claw cultists, a demonstration of a personal, self-sanctioned exterminatus that failed its primary purpose. The Dialogus of the Order of the Lexicon were summoned to the Forge world of Vanger's Folly to study ancient texts, and decades later, a community of the Order of the Ebon Chalice appeared, destroying all 4 planetary spaceports. And the Canonus Intolerance executed an exterminatus by releasing self-igniting pathogens into the atmosphere, because the inhabitants were deemed tainted by the texts they studied, a cleansing driven by extreme religious zeal. 5 commanderies from the Order of Our Martyred Lady were dispatched to cleanse the heretical cults on the mining world of Chander, but the sisters never arrived at their destination, taken as a sign that the Emperor denied the planet's inhabitants the grace of purification. And subsequently, an exterminatus order for the world was issued and carried out, planetary destruction based on a dark, mystical omen. The imperial government of Franks fell silent for about 20 years, and when an inquisitorial fleet arrived, communication was established, with the planetary governor explaining the silence away as warp storms and orc raiders, even inviting Inquisitor Vanom to the surface, where it was discovered the planet was under the control of Genestalers, and their plan to infiltrate the fleet was compromised, forcing the Dark Angels and the Inquisitor to withdraw to orbit under combat and cleanse the planet with viral bombs, a chilling example of a threat so deeply rooted that only wholesale destruction could contain it. New Syria, initially purged of life by the forces of the Word-Bearers, was later subjected to a formal exterminatus by a fleet of the Dark Angels under the leadership of Lion L. Johnson himself during the Siege of Terra, a final, official destruction of a world already dead. The planet Olympia, home of the Iron Warriors, was besieged by the Imperial Fists and Ultramarines, but when defeat became inevitable, the Iron Warriors themselves triggered their own missile arsenals across the surface of the besieged world, turning Olympia into a scorched wasteland, a traitorous, self-inflicted exterminatus to deny the Loyalists their victory. The once fertile world of Cressa gradually turned into an icy death world under the influence of chaos, and after most of the planet's population was evacuated, the planet was subjected to exterminatus with viral bombs, a strategic withdrawal followed by necessary annihilation. Amon Morris is a forbidden dead world in the Kixis sector, where the human population was deemed too tainted by mutation during the Anjava Crusade and was disgracefully obliterated by exterminatus, with such horrors witnessed that after its destruction, its previous location was struck from all records, a final erasure from galactic history to bury a terrible memory. The population of Talon managed to avoid complete annihilation from a viral bomb attack by fleeing to especially deep underground shelters, but their once lush world was forever transformed into a desert, a chilling reminder that even survival carries an astronomical cost. The destruction of Midgardia, where Logan Grimnar detonated the core, caused gravitational waves that reached the expectant Silver Towers and forced them to vanish back into the warp. And fragments of Midgardia fell upon the surface of other planets in the Fenris system for many years, with those who attempted to explore these impact sites said to be cursed and died slowly, the aftereffects of exterminatus spreading physical and spiritual taint across a whole system. The world of Mugulath Bay, formerly Agrellan, was subjected to exterminatus by the Imperium after a prolonged battle against the Tiao, with a lone torpedo containing a rare Mechanicus device that scoured the planet's atmosphere, striking an area of natural gases, leading to its abandonment and the engulfment of the entire Damocles Gulf in flames, a catastrophic sacrifice proving that even victory can lead to total loss. New Syria, which had initially been purged of life by the forces of the World Eaters and Word Bearers, was now subjected to exterminatus by a fleet of the Dark Angels under the leadership of Lion L. Johnson himself during the Siege of Terra, a final, official destruction of a world already dead. Joros was the first home world of the Firehawks chapter, who were fighting against the renegade forces of the Mad Gog Van Dyer, and for their disobedience, the Firehawks paid with the destruction of their first home world, subjected to a thermal bombardment that boiled its atmosphere and scorched its surface, leaving only charred ash on the ground. Verdun II was an imperial world that became the site of a series of battles between the Death Strike chapter and hordes of recidivists, and the chapter master made the decision for an exterminatus on the rebellious planet Hesperax, the imperial world, distinct from the Dark Eldar world due to heavy losses. Sometimes, annihilation is chosen simply out of battlefield fatigue. Amon Morris is a forbidden dead world in the Kixis sector, where the human population was deemed too tainted by mutation during the Anjava Crusade and was disgracefully obliterated by exterminatus, with such horrors witnessed that after its destruction, its previous location was struck from all records, a final erasure from galactic history to bury a terrible memory. The people of Shenel Long too eagerly welcomed the Word Bearers once more after its reclamation, leading Chief Librarian Mephestin to conclude that the people were irrevocably tainted by chaos, ordering the world's destruction in the fire of exterminatus, a necessary murder to stop spiritual contamination. Sondheim V was transformed into a demon world by Makar the Reborn, but when Hive Fleet Leviathan descended upon it, the Sky Sentinels chapter decided to call for exterminatus without even considering making planetfall, leaving the Grey Knights to retrieve a valuable artifact before the entire world was destroyed and the memories of the involved Sky Sentinels were erased. Preserving an artifact was worth a planetary sacrifice. St. Josmund's Hope, the penal colony, was successfully obliterated by the Strikeforce Herald overloading the Generatorum network, but all its members perished during the planet's destruction. The final victory was reserved for the weapon, not the warriors. The destruction of Midgardia, where Logan Grimnar detonated the core, caused gravitational waves that reached the expectant silver towers and forced them to vanish back into the warp. And fragments of Midgardia fell upon the surface of other planets in the Fenris system for many years, with those who attempted to explore these impact sites said to be cursed and died slowly, the aftereffects of exterminatus spreading physical and spiritual taint across a whole system. The planet Olympia, home of the Iron Warriors, was besieged by the Imperial Fists and Ultramarines, but when defeat became inevitable, the Iron Warriors themselves triggered their own missile arsenals across the surface of the besieged world, turning Olympia into a scorched wasteland, a traitorous, self-inflicted exterminatus to deny the Loyalists their victory. The once fertile world of Cressa gradually turned into an icy death world under the influence of chaos, and after most of the planet's population was evacuated, the planet was subjected to exterminatus with viral bombs, a strategic withdrawal followed by necessary annihilation. What if the Warhammer worlds were annihilated? The answer is that they are every day. The terror before which all else pales is not the roar of plasma or the brilliance of torpedoes, but the silent accord of billions to accept this sacrifice. Exterminatus is the Imperium's final, perfect decision. It is the chilling answer to the existential threats that face humanity. It preserves humanity by destroying parts of it. Thus is born a terror before which all else pales. Not in the roar of plasma, not in the brilliance of torpedoes, but in the silent accord of billions to serve even in death. Exterminatus is an expression in High Gothic that sounds beautiful but is utterly immoral in its essence. A sanction of the highest authorities of the Imperium of Man intended to annihilate all life on a planet. This is undertaken only in those extreme circumstances where a potential or actual strategic threat is of such a high level that it could spread to other imperial planets. The galaxy is bloodthirsty, and no world is insured against the final judgment descending from the skies without warning, without remorse.